I think we're going to see 1 million this year. Bitcoin price has been suppressed for a very long time. We should have hit these levels at maybe 100K a few years ago. But if you look at the amount of fraud that was perpetrated by FTX and other companies, that's really what stole the 100K from Bitcoin in 2021. We should have been there, but they stole that. Our thesis is that we are going to this hyperbitcoinized state. That's the final step. But in between, there has to be a transition from the fiat system into this new system.
Right.
And I don't believe a lot of countries are well prepared. And I also believe this transition is going to happen very rapidly. It's not a matter of decades out. It's probably within the next 5 to 10 years.
Many consider Samson Mow's $1 million prediction for Bitcoin controversial and unrealistic. Critics have pointed out that global macro conditions and rising geopolitical tensions make Mow's predictions particularly unfeasible. Yet the Jan 3 chief executive officer argues that these exact factors will propel Bitcoin's prices straight to $1 million when the time comes. According to Mow, all we need for reasonably higher Bitcoin prices is a tiny crack in the system. This crack will show the world's over 8 billion population that the current monetary system is not only skewed, it's completely rigged to fail. Mow believes this crack will begin in the US bond market, which was once thought to be the world's safest financial market, but is now showing more signs of volatility than several other asset classes. Mow paints a vivid picture of the potential crisis that could unfold if investors lose faith in the US government's ability to manage its massive debt. He envisions a rapid unraveling of the entire monetary system, with everyone scrambling for a solution. In a recent discussion with podcaster and journalist Efrat Frenigson, Mow delved into the concept of hyperbitcoinization, the possibility of sovereign adoption of Bitcoin, and his $1 million Bitcoin prediction. As we share snippets from this insightful conversation, we encourage you to engage with our content by liking this video, subscribing to our channel, and turning on post notifications for more thought-provoking videos like this. Thank you, and enjoy the video.
I believe hyperbitcoinization is an inevitability, and we are just speeding it up a little bit by trying to get the nation states on board. Jan 3, we work with governments, work with politicians, regulators, central banks too, if they're open to discussions. We're engaging with them to help them implement a Bitcoin strategy, because our thesis is that we are going to this hyper-Bitcoinized state. That's the final step. But in between, there has to be a transition from the fiat system into this new system. And I don't believe a lot of countries are well prepared. And I also believe this transition is going to happen very rapidly. It's not a matter of decades out. It's probably within the next 5 to 10 years.
Really?
Yes. And that means a lot of places are ill-prepared for this transition. And being unprepared for that transition means that a lot of people will suffer. Similar to demonetization events in the past. If you look at India in 2016, they pulled some currencies out of circulation. And a lot of people died. About a dozen people died during this very tumultuous demonetization event. And it's just removing a few bills of circulation, but people were lining up at the bank. Some were dying of exposure. Some were not able to pay medical bills because they had the old bills, and the hospital wouldn't take the old ones because they're worried that it's going to be worthless. But if you take that and extrapolate that to the whole world, we have about 8 billion people that need to onboard into Bitcoin still. And we're nowhere prepared to do that. El Salvador is decently prepared. They have their national wallet. They have some education programs. They're teaching people in schools. And they have Bitcoin law. But other places are not prepared. So what we hope to do is facilitate that and get some form of Bitcoin adoption now so that they have a few years' time to gracefully move into Bitcoin as a parallel track to the fiat track and be ready for that point at which fiat dies. We come at Bitcoin adoption in terms of incentives and trying to align incentives for them to Bitcoin. And typically this is in line with mining. So if they have excess energy, and a lot of more developing, poorer countries in the world have a lot of untapped energy reserves, They just have no way to access them and no money to build hydro dams and geothermal plants and the such. So we look at and see what they need. If they need infrastructure like airports, roads, whatever, hospitals, they could mine Bitcoin and pay for those things with Bitcoin because they have untapped energy, or they're just throwing away excess energy. That's what we go to the governments with. We go and see what they need and what we can do to make the incentives align together. Or it could be that they have ESG goals and they want to remove flare gas installations. And you can do that mining Bitcoin. So we just kind of try to figure out all the different pieces of the puzzle that appeal to them and approach it that way. But we don't talk about the hyperbitcoinization end game and things like that, because I think it will scare them.
For Mow, getting countries and nation-states to adopt Bitcoin is a matter of freedom and restoring balance in the world. As a Canadian, the Jan 3 CEO cites the example of the Canadian government's overreach during the Freedom Convoy protests in 2022. The Justin Trudeau-led government declared the Emergencies Act an extraordinary piece of federal legislation, granting itself additional powers with which it then proceeded to abuse citizens' rights. Not only were the protesters forcefully and physically removed from the protesting grounds, but people who donated to their cause were also demonized and continuously harassed by the government. The banks also readily helped freeze the personal accounts of the organizers, cutting them off banking services without any authorization from the courts. It really does not get more diabolic. Mao warns that many other governments will resort to such tyrannical activities when the great Fiat Ponzi begins to collapse. They will do everything to stop the people from taking control, including seizing all properties and assets within the system. Here are more clips from the interview.
I think at the end of the day, governments are still made up of people. And you can have bad governments because there are bad people, weak people in the government, like Trudeau. And there's plenty of examples of this. But you can also have good people in the government that want good things for their constituents. But the Bitcoin adoption aspect is critical, I believe. And this is why a lot of us are galvanized around Jan 3 in our mission, because we can see Bitcoin changing the government, changing the relation between the state and a citizen of the state, whereby you're not just a tax slave anymore, but you're someone that has to be respected and listened to, because now they can't just take your stuff, right? You can't print money anymore. Like, inflation is basically hidden money printing. People don't realize it, but you can print money explicitly or implicitly through inflation.
Yep.
You can tax people explicitly or tax people secretly through inflation.
Yep.
And with Bitcoin, you can't do that anymore. And if you look at a lot of government policy, the bad policy, most people would never agree to things like what they're doing. Like in Canada, we have the Arrive Can scandal, or Arrive scam, as they're calling it now.
What is that?
It was during COVID. They had an app that you had to put your vaccination status and update everything every time you entered and left Canada.
Right.
And they spent $84 million on this app that just logged data, basically. And a recent revelation was the CEO of ArriveCan was actually a government employee at the National Defense Department of Defense. So there's a lot of corruption, and Bitcoin can fix all of this, I believe. But the point is, there are a lot of bad things governments can do to people, and Bitcoin removes the ability for them to do that, because now you kind of have to ask people to put up money, whether it's for war or for ArriveCan or something, and people wouldn't agree to spending money in that way. So it restores a balance, I believe, to the force. But not everyone can vote with their feet. Some people have
Sure.
to stay for whatever reasons.
Sure.
And there's also the challenge of can you leave too? Because we've learned through COVID that mobility can be stopped. So I think we have to at some point engage with the governments. We can't just flee. There's only so many places we can go. Like, in theory, we could all flee to El Salvador. But then what happens to El Salvador?
Yep.
If every country is a fiat country and controlled by the money printers and we're all in El Salvador, well, they can just nuke us or something, right? So we have to fight back and we have to engage to bring more allies to the Bitcoin
Where
side.
we are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think we will get there simply because of necessities. Governments at the end of the day need money. How do you maintain a standing army for defense if you cannot pay the soldiers? If your money is worthless? And we've seen examples of this from history where the government can't pay the soldiers and that's it. If the soldiers want Bitcoin, then maybe you need to have Bitcoin. So it becomes a national imperative for them actually to have sound money. And this is why a lot of governments buy gold, because they know that the fiat money is just a game, a thinly held together by tape game that is going to fall apart at any time. That's why they're buying gold. So
Yes.
Bitcoin is just new gold.
In other news, Galaxy Digital CEO Mike Novogratz has given 3 factors he believes could push Bitcoin to new all-time highs in 2024. The factors include a Fed rate cut and a big regulatory breakthrough. During a recent interview published on Galaxy's YouTube channel, Novogratz said, "There's a resurgence of the 'oh my god, the economy's slowing down' narrative, which will be helpful. I don't think Bitcoin will take out the old $73,000 high unless we get the Fed in action or get some regulatory breakthrough. I do believe the next move is up because I think we're going to get closer to the election and Powell is going to want to cut rates." Another bullish factor, according to the Galaxy Digital CEO, is the amount of US federal government spending and mounting debt, which he believes will lead more people to invest in Bitcoin as digital gold. Novogratz said, "Having really crappy policymakers and profligate spenders and populists in Washington is great for my net worth. That's just the story of Bitcoin. Bitcoin is going up for the same reason gold is going up. It's gone up faster because we're a newer technology, we are a newer commodity, and therefore the adoption cycle is happening faster." Please share your thoughts on Mow's $1 million Bitcoin prediction and Novogratz's comments. Also, ensure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications for more videos like this. Thanks for watching.